Welcome, everybody. So we are really, really, really lucky today to be speaking to Amber Cox today, so from Maine. So Amber, I met maybe 3 years ago. Do you think, Amber?
Yeah, maybe longer, actually.
Maybe even longer. Yeah. Through the almonds. But Amber does lots of neat things. So today she's going to be speaking on emotional intelligence. When we first met, Amber, one thing that I thought was so cool was going in and speaking to medical professionals around language, and some semantics. I think you were doing that. Also the hypnotherapy, and actually lots and lots of stuff. So we've been talking about getting Amber onto HNZ for quite a while. And so here we are today. But emotional intelligence, of course, and hypnotherapy together, an amazing blend. And I think it's something that all of us need to learn as well. And I think, Amber, you might even go into how it fits in the world. I know even in education and schooling. So I'll take it away. Off you go.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And thanks for everybody that's showing up and listening to what I have to share today. I am passionate about emotional intelligence, and I'll just give you just a little bit of background to expand on how I got into it. So I became a hypnotist first, which I have been doing for about 15 years. But when I started, I was working in corporate sales. And I've always been fascinated with communication. And I was working in a medical environment, and I noticed how often teams of people really struggle to get along and to have really good dialogues and healthy communication. And I found that, to find a high functioning team was not not typical. And so when I studied hypnosis, I knew that hypnosis could really help a lot of people and a lot of teams in the offices, but a lot of people were not open to it. There's a lot of, as we know, misconceptions about hypnosis, and sometimes people shut down, especially in the medical community here in the United States. So I attended a conference, and I actually was, set in on a workshop on emotional intelligence with Beryl Komar. And it literally was like this light bulb went off. And I thought, this is brilliant. So emotional intelligence, just for point of reference, because, maybe you're familiar, maybe you're not. But emotional intelligence is actually, there's a ton of research out there to support it. It's, in my mind, it's an emotional construct of it's a system of how we process emotions and interact. But it actually goes back to the early 90s. Daniel Goleman. Has anyone heard of Daniel Goleman, who kind of pioneered? Yeah. And he really brought emotional intelligence to the forefront, what it was. And quite simply, it is creating self-awareness and the ability to manage within that self-awareness, to manage our emotions, regulate our emotions with ourselves, and then also with other people. So there are really four main quadrants. The first one is self-awareness. The second is state control of self. The third one is within the social arenas with a group of people. And the fourth is relationship management. So it encompasses all these areas. And this is what the research shows. This is like one of the most important skills that a person can develop, and it can be developed, that will exponentially increase the success of their life, personal and professionally. And it's something that can be developed. So IQ, or our intelligence, is something that we're born with, and it changes a little bit, but not much at a certain period. But EQ, emotional intelligence, can be developed. And some people that have very high Qs have low emotional intelligence, and and vice versa. So someone with a lower IQ that has high emotional intelligence, they tend to be much more successful because they're very good at self-awareness and navigating, controlling their emotions and within themselves and with other people. So when I sat in on this workshop, I saw everything I was seeing about dysfunctional communication and communication barriers. And communication, it makes or break any relationship. So I certified, studied with Beryl Colmar, and I just ran with it. And one of the great things is it offered me new language to approach my the corporate accounts that I was seeing and the medical community that were not open to the word hypnosis. So it was a huge gateway to open doors, because there's been a very, very big focus on the development of emotional intelligence and how important it is in a person's life and in the workplace. And so for me, it was a huge aha moment, and it was literally a gateway into helping more people, getting in front of people, and also an opportunity to educate people about what hypnosis is and what it's not, where, a lot of people were not open to it. So, yeah, I'll stop for just a minute as I give some background to give anybody an opportunity to ask a question or, um, you know, uh, talk a little bit more about something that I've talked about already.
Do you want us to add a question to the chat, or?
You can ask a question out loud if you want to, Ariana.
So you mentioned about how emotional intelligence increased people's success in corporate business. How does that then compare to those who are narcissists and succeed at that same level?
Well, I don't. So that's a really great question. I honestly think that, so I wrote a book. This is my COVID project on emotional intelligence. And I wrote a book about specifically for the workplace. And the research out there really supports that anyone in leadership and management that has a higher level of emotional intelligence, there's much morale is increased, engagement increased, productivity is increased, just overall general well-being is increased. And I think what happens, it's very tricky, because when someone is in a leadership position, it's like who's keeping them accountable. And for me, one of the reasons I wrote the book and that I talk about this a lot is about having standards of behaviors modeled, and that there's checkpoints in the corporate world, so that people are held accountable and they can't just get away with bad behavior. Like there's a system of checks and balances. And I think what's happening and what the research is showing, that people are getting over it, being treated badly at work, incivility at work. There was a Gallup poll that was taken about how many people have experienced incivility at work. And if I were to ask you, like, what percentage you thought of people that experienced incivility, what would you say it would be, just off the top of your head?
80.
80?
80.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah. 98%. 98%. It's staggering. And there's subtle forms of incivility, and then there are more like kind of in your face. But the research, I think what's happening, and especially like after COVID, is people are getting, they're at the point where, we went through this pandemic and through this like global crisis. And I think people really have reevaluated what they're willing to put up with. And there's just tired of bad bosses. It's like, you know what, enough's enough, and it's not worth it. So I think that the evidence is out there to support, how important it is to have leadership development and have like accountability, and that it's becoming way less tolerable than it used to. People are, the world is changing, the perspective has changed. Emotional intelligence is definitely in the spotlight. And it's what I call a proven system. And so I don't know if that answers your question or not. And I think that, yeah, people are pushing back more, and it's just not okay, not okay. It's interesting you mentioned that, because in my book, and this is, I've had bad bosses. I'm like glad I work for myself. I dedicated one chapter to a boss because it was horrible experience. It was horrible. And I was a lot younger, and, wasn't in this field, hypnosis or anything, but I wrote about it. And it's called the Peter Principle. Is anyone familiar with the Peter Principle? It's getting promoted to your level of incompetence. So basically what happens a lot is, if someone is really good at their job, their hard skill, it doesn't necessarily mean they're great with like leading people. And what happens a lot of time is people are promoted because their level of competence at their hard skill. And then they're managing people. And then what happens is they just have no idea how to inspire and lead people. And then as a result, everything kind of gets derailed, morale goes down, people call in sick more, productivity decreases, turnover, training, all of that starts to happen. It's like London Bridge is falling down, everything starts to collapse.
Oh, you can see how important it would be for your job, because I know you said you travel for work. You're going into organizations and teaching this stuff, because if you can actually show that graph that this is what, if this is taught and people learn this stuff, this is the productivity and how it affects the workplace. I mean, that's huge.
It is
huge.
Yeah, it's so important. And it's not only that, but what happens is, when people go into their workplace, I mean, environment is one of the top things that affect a person's well-being. And so it carries over into the home life. And so, when people are in an environment that is incredibly, divisive, or people are, not getting along, there's a lot of communication breakdowns, a lot of, personalities that, don't get along with each other, just different dynamics. And there's no one there leading and developing people's personalities and emotional intelligence. Then that stress carries over, they take it home, it affects their personal relationships. And I've had many clients in my office that are coming to me because they are just, toxic environment in the workplace, and they are just miserable. So I not only bring this to the corporate and the medical, I incorporate this with every single client that comes into my office. I use the principles, the guidelines of emotional intelligence. And the reason that I do that is, there's a huge opportunity to not just improve the person's life in one area that they came, but to exponentially improve it in all other areas of their life. And it is a system around emotions, and that's what we deal with as hypnotists. And so for emotional intelligence really is a foundation. And then what I find is, whether you're, hypnosis, NLP, tapping, other, whatever processes or modalities, you drop those in, but you're using the quadrant. So you're covering all of these different areas that, not only with you, but in their external world, their internal and their external world, it's kind of cross-pollinating everything to know that the change is happening in all the areas of their life, and they're able to manage and regulate and interact in a much more healthy way. And when they can learn state control, I mean, state control is one of the most important things that you can learn in the outside world that affects everything, our health and everything. So I use that in everything that I do. I had, so an example, if it's okay, if I could give you like an example of, like, with a client. So this was some months ago. I had a client come to me to stop smoking. Okay. Well, I've done it a lot. You can, help a person to stop smoking in one session. We can do that. Sometimes it takes a couple. However, is it safe? And what I mean by that is, this was a great example of checking and following up. Was, I had a client come in for smoking. He was referred to by a counselor. He had some other things going on, and he had a surgery he really needed. So he did stop smoking. And then I always built in follow-ups. And even if someone has stopped, I always check in to see there could be another emotion coming up, something else. And so when I checked in on him, he wasn't smoking, but what he got became very angry, like really, really angry. And that really wasn't his personality. So I had him come back in, and we didn't talk about the cigarettes, but we talked a lot about like, um, what was going on in his outside world. And for him, it was a loss of control because when he was little, um, his parents burned him with cigarettes. And then he started to self-harm. And although he had to stop, it was his last connection. And so, wow, if I didn't have this system in place and this follow-up and checking the ecology, I mean, that's huge. I mean, so there's safety within this system based on emotional intelligence that I think is so incredibly important, because it allows to check in, to measure the change, just to check to make sure the change is safe, that it's consistent, that it's happening. So I built it. I follow it with everything that I do with individual clients, and then also when I'm working in the corporate or the medical world.
Awesome. So the emotional intelligence is, like you're saying, it's a system. So if you incorporated it into your hypnotherapy, it's a system. It's a thing that you do
Yeah.
week to week, or how does it fit in with what you actually do?
So what I actually have developed is it's a plug and play system. So the system is based on the construct of emotional intelligence, and under each quadrant there are certain things that I do and certain tools that I drop in, and I follow that pretty regularly because the dimensions of emotional intelligence are: one, creating self-awareness. That's the very first quadrant. Well, what are you going to do under that? What's going to happen under that? And also what it allows for. So I say four, I set it up in four sessions, and then I go sometimes to 8 sessions, but generally 4 I start with, because that's the basic 4 quadrants. And then I can check from there and then see, and that's over the course of a month. So systems, and if you ever looked at systems theories or learning, systems are so important for life, for everything. No matter what we do, it's good to have a system to follow. And so what this allows for the hypnotist is to have a system to follow, so that you're never really wondering, like, what do I do? And also I find too that in our field, in hypnosis, there's lots of great tools and techniques. There's tons of protocols. And I know for me, I love learning. I love it. But I found when I first started, it was almost like too many. And what do I use here? Or when do I use this? Or, so with this protocol, it's almost like you kind of, you're not coming at your client with a firing hose. You're kind of chunking it down, so you're not giving them too much, but enough. You're also allowing them, having intellectual conversation with them, that's actually educating them on how their brain works and how they can manage their state, and allowing time for them to have some techniques that they can incorporate into their outer world. So if someone has a goal, say the goal is an outer circle, and then there's an inner layer. That's the strategy of this system. And in the middle is the belief. So we work on, a belief, like I can do this, and also the strategy that's going to support the goal. A lot of people will just look at, I want this goal, and
Yeah.
they'll try to get it, but they don't have a strategy, they don't have a system, and they don't have the belief or the mindset. That's where hypnosis, NLP comes in. And also, I have a great article on it. This is something that I tripped over, and this is really cool. So Is everyone here a hypnotist? Yeah. So we have a huge advantage if you are doing kind of hypno coaching, because third loop learning is at the identity level, which is where hypnosis goes. A lot of traditional coaching is first and second loop learning. So an example would be the light bulb in my office goes out. So I change it. That's kind of like first loop, like cause and effect. Second loop is, oh, it goes out again. Oh, maybe I should check the switch. And third loop goes down to finding more the root cause. It keeps happening. So then I'm like going deeper and digging deeper. So as hypnotists, you're already doing third loop learn. It's a huge advantage over traditional coaching. And I'm not taking away anything from traditional coaching, but we know when we're coaching the subconscious mind, how powerful it is. So, so that was a very interesting discovery for me as far as an advantage of what we're doing, and then combining that, combining the hypnosis with the emotional intelligence, and it's such a powerful pair. I call it a power couple when you combine both.
So how do you work when you do organizations? So do you do like sessions with groups, or how does it work when you're when you're going in?
I usually work with groups or teams, and then if there are individual people that need some one-on-one, like they have like hot spots or areas where, say one manager or someone in leadership needs more one-to-one coaching, then I'll do that. And otherwise I'll do emotional development and teach what it is and how to incorporate that and how to develop their own emotional intelligence. In the medical field in the United States, they actually, all the doctors and the practices are ranked on how they treat the patient. And there are national benchmarks and standards. And if they don't fall in what the measurement is, a good measurement is considered, then it shows up on their surveys. And usually it shows up in the way of, readmittances, people not taking medications wrong, people not following up with their doctor, all kinds of safety things. It affects outcomes. And so in the medical field, I did some intense coaching for 2 years with doctors, nurses, teams, and developed a coaching system based on best practices, and also that incorporated emotional intelligence. So building rapport, utilizing language, all body language, things like that. How do they do that? How do they get into rapport? How do you ask the right questions? Things like that. So it's you can use it in a variety of different ways. And as I said, kind of like going back to the first of the conversation, it's a gateway for organizations that would not otherwise open their doors or their ears to hypnosis. And if I had not changed my language, I would not have done the medical coaching. They would not have even looked at my resume. I had to kind of back it off on the hypnosis. I didn't take it off at all. But I had to put the emotional intelligence at the forefront. And if I hadn't done that, they would not have invited me in to speak. They wouldn't have, they wouldn't have done it. And there's also corporations that I worked with that would not have done it because, they're like, again, unfortunately, there's a lot of misconceptions and misinformation about hypnosis. And also hypnosis is, for all of us, yes, we do hypnosis, but we do a lot of other things too, so it's a very powerful tool in our toolbox. And so it's one, and I think many, if you're like me, I have lots of tools in my toolbox. Hypnosis is a primary one, obviously, but there are other ones. So this is just, it's a great gateway and door, opener to get somebody to listen to you. The research is there, statistics are there. If any of you are interested, I have all the research and things like that. I mean, I have more information than I can even remember. It's crazy. So as I geek out on this, and so if you're interested and there's anything that I could share with you that would be helpful, please reach out to me.
was going to say that we'll talk about what you do soon. I know there's some people here that would be totally keen, and I know there's some people right here that would work amazingly going into medical and corporate teaching this stuff. Yeah, Hannah, you're one of them. So going back to, just out of curiosity, going back to the person, so say you have someone coming in and they're in a very ugly workplace, and you teach the emotional intelligence and hypnosis. Does a majority of them end up leaving the workplace and finding a new job, or does it just help them fit into what? I know you probably have both. Do you find that the workplace sometimes changes when they change, if that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And really, for me, my job is to meet them where they are, and it's not to recommend that they leave their job, but they have to find for themselves what's the best decision. And within that, if it's to stay, like I'm working with a woman right now, and I've been working with her on and off for over a year. And it's amazing that the skills that she's developed around boundaries and taking a stand and standing up for herself and creating understanding and self-awareness about why she does the things that she does. And so I've used the emotional intelligence, and it's been about over a year. And she actually just went on an interview last week, and they offered her a job. And so for her, she stayed in it for a while. She wasn't in a position where she was ready to leave. And then some people, they're in a place where they're just too distraught. It's too taking too much of a toll on them, and they have to find something else to do. I had a lady that, and this is so interesting. She was working for a big corporation in Maine, and she actually came to me after she stopped working. But what had happened, you find this very interesting, is that it was a very hostile work, very critical, very judgmental, tons of stress. And she was went to on break to eat, and she went to pick up an apple. She took a bite. She couldn't swallow it. Her throat closed up. And from that point on, she started to have tons of issues with swallowing food. She lost so much weight that, and she'd been to all kinds of medical professionals. And then she came to see me. Her sister actually found me. She was very weak. She was taking maybe 150 calories a day at the most. It was a very dire situation. And so when we started to unpack this, it was all about that. So me is like, I'm not taking your crap anymore. It's like the body shutting down. I mean, it impacted her. It threatened her life. It was life threatening. So I think that, it just depends on the situation. She had obviously left because of her health, but it got to a point, where she had to, where other people, financially, it depends on their situation, but it can help people to manage and not take things personal. We always say the meaning of our communication is the response we get. We attach meaning, what story we're making, what is it triggering. So there's an opportunity for all that when you're working under the system of emotional intelligence. It's not someone just coming in and saying, oh, I have anxiety or stress in this situation. Okay, well, we can deal with that. However, are we going deep enough? Are we really going into that identity, that third loop? Are we really looking into, okay, I have an opportunity here to significantly improve this person's life, not just in this change, because habits need to happen, systems need to happen, and they don't happen in isolation. They need to be built, and they need to be repetitive, and they need to be sustainable, and they need to be something someone can relax into, and to have that time for a person to start to really understand themselves and why they do what they do. So it really provides, a solid foundation to, explore these different areas to really improve that person's life, not just in that change that it seems like, but in all these areas that it can improve their life. even someone that's in a bad personal relationship, or ending a relationship or going through divorce, or I work a lot with women that are in transition and, just trying to figure that out, and who are they, after being in a long relationship, and like, or, their kids have moved out, and it's like, now what do I do? Where am I? Who am I? Um, or, someone that's been, I had a woman here recently, and that's still coming, and just had a horrible ending to a relationship, and it was violent. And so her whole world's upside down. And she's like, why didn't I see this? Why, and part of the work is she was in such a place of like pain and blame. And so to be able to help her to unpack that, now that couldn't be possible to happen in one session. Some of this is so complex. Emotions are, everybody's, as we know, different, has different experiences, different, things that, belief system, things like that. So it really does allow, for, a very intentional approach to change in all the areas of a person's life.
Awesome. Does anyone have any questions? Or Ariana, you can ask that one if you want.
Here I am. I've read up on non-violent communication. You're aware of that one. Is this what EQ incorporates within its system as well, Amber?
I actually am not sure what you mean by I know what nonviolent means, but I'm not sure in the context.
Oh, okay. Let me bring some stuff up. You skipped that one for now. And my other question was, have you actually integrated the EQ system within hypnosis as well, or they're an amalgamated?
Yeah, so I use, well, it really depends on what we cover, but in like, say the first time a client's coming into me, sometimes I will use formal hypnosis and sometimes I will not. It's part of like building, like starting to build self-awareness and starting to ask questions like about, why they do what they do, and just starting to create that and getting a rapport with the person, so that they really open up to me and share with me, in a very authentic way, what's going on, and have that person start to look at themselves out of curiosity. And so I may do hypnosis, I may do some NLP, I may do some tapping, just depends on what presents. And so there's some of that in every session, but there's also really important to, I give a lot of, teach a lot of different tools to help manage, to do state control. And so I will teach a couple in each session, one or two simple things that they can start doing to calm down their nervous system, to repattern their thoughts, to create awareness. So it's a combination, but as I said, the foundation is that one is creating awareness, regulation, and then in the social quadrants and relationship management.
Oh, any other questions, guys?
I keep forgetting I'm on mute. So does this also broaden across more areas than just medical? And yeah, so it goes into sales, whatever it happens to be.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it applies to everything. I mean, to me, emotional intelligence is like, it is, imperative, like, to a healthy relationships and communication. It's to me like breath is to life. It's the source, and everybody can use it. And when we're creating awareness and we're really like examining, what did I make that mean, what am I feeling, am I noticing the grab, how I'm managing that, where did that come from, is it something I need to deal with in the moment, or is it something that I need to take a deeper look and I need to heal from? So it really opens up this huge, opportunity of self-awareness. And when we can create that and we can regulate that, I mean, it improves our life in so many ways. Because I've been in situations where with this work, like I've really had to use state control. I actually had something happen last night that was really triggering, and I knew it. And I knew because we know emotions win every time if we don't apply logic, right? And that's what emotional intelligence is. It's fusing emotional and logic to have the best possible outcome. And I knew I was so grabbed, and I knew I was I literally needed to not have a communication with this person. Um, and I needed to really step back, see the whole picture, calm down, and really think through what was the best approach. And now, if I didn't have this skill, this intentional, I might have just been like, dumping, But the outcome is so much more positive, and the ability to kind of check yourself, like, why am I being triggered? What is mine here? What's going on? How's the best way to communicate this? Does it need to be communicated? What might be going on with the other person that played into that? And to create empathy in this situation, because I was so emotionally triggered, I wasn't even feeling any empathy. I was pretty upset about something that had happened, a big miscommunication. And so today was a different day, and I knew not to broach it. So part of it is, using, regulation techniques, and intentionally knowing that, and knowing thyself. And so I had a very productive conversation that would not have gone that way had I not uh, used my emotional intelligence skills. And it's intentional, because we're human. We're triggered, right? We're emotion. That's what we are. We're emotions, right? So happens all the time. So it's an invaluable skill. And I think also people can compensate for, when you start to learn about, people's deeper needs, their significant needs, their values, things like that, especially in what their dominant personality drivers are, how they deal with stress and conflict. And if you have your emotional intelligence, you can kind of like gauge the person, and then you can choose your communication around, how that person will receive, so that you can, you know, deliver a message that person will be open to hearing, instead of might be defensive or shut down. When you start to be able to create the awareness in the social quadrants and relationship quadrants, like for me and my husband, I know specifically like how he's wired, and how, we've been together a long time, and I've worked, very hard at, having communication where he can really hear me, because we have like different parenting styles. And so he has a military background, and we stand for the same things, but sometimes the delivery is different. And so for me, just knowing that, then I can compensate, because I want his message to be heard, and I want him to hear mine. And so yeah, so it's such an invaluable skill to have, for yourself personally, as well as in the professional environment, because we all have people that we come into contact with that can irritate us or rub us wrong. But what we can do is be able to put that in perspective, and not let our emotions run away with us, and have it kind of derail the conversations, communication, or just be so uptight around them that it's just uncomfortable.
So Emma, may have been you that mentioned it to me, but I remember quite a few years ago being told that in the elite schools, when I say the elite schools in America, I'm talking about, the wealth families that own big companies and organizations whose children are going to be, moving into, they've already got their job lined up for them. I was told that they purposely incorporated emotional intelligence training into the children from at least age 5, and it's actually incorporated into the system, so that by the time these kids are 16, 17, 18 and going into immediate leadership roles, they have the ability to emotionally regulate. And they were saying that one of the biggest things for what I'm sure you told me, one of the biggest things with people out in the workforce that don't get ahead and get the top jobs is the inability to regulate. So in other words, they end up scrapping and having a fight. They end up saying things they shouldn't say, and they end up walking out of jobs too early. But that it's actually part of the school system. When you get into these quite private schools, it's trained from day one. Yeah.
That's amazing. And that is what it is, because they probably weren't taught, right? So if you reverse engineer emotions, if we go all the way back, how do we learn? We learn from the people that care for us. And if we're not being taught how to regulate, and a lot of children aren't taught, I wasn't taught. Children should be seen and not heard. Children are like, we teach them, they're taught practical things, how to, like, eat with a spoon and a fork, and how to put on their shoes, and how to brush your teeth. We don't spend enough time on teaching them how to care for their emotions. And so as a result, those emotions are unattended, and they don't know how to regulate, and it comes out and come out in, very, can come as anger, as resentment, as, control issues, judgment, all kinds of things that negatively impact their world and the people that they're in relationship with. And the thing that's tricky about leadership is that when a person does not have this developed, they're in a position of power and control, and so they can really misuse that. Um, so it's yeah, I think that's so brilliant. And I mean, what a wonderful, imagine if it was incorporated in, early learning, as just as much as all the other stuff, learning your ABCs and numbers and things like that.
Yeah, I was just thinking, for people listening, that if you do like working with children with the hypnotherapy, how you could probably incorporate the emotional intelligence and then get it into schools, because I think schools would look at emotional intelligence and be able to actually pass it through, whereas some of the other modalities, even though you want it in the schools, it has to pass through a board, and the board of people are quite, a lot of the people on the board, they're not open to anything, and they've also got the power trip of being on the board. But I think being able to go in and say, using emotional intelligence as a term of what's going to be taught, and showing that this is what's taught in different schools around the world for leadership, learning this stuff, I can see it. There's a door that could be opened in New Zealand massively. Yeah.
That, yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that is just made me think of when you were saying that, and this is something that I had, hadn't considered, but I was actually, it's probably, I think this is 3 or 4 years ago, I was doing an emotional intelligence training at the Elmans, Larry and Cheryl Elmans. And there was a man that was taking it that was in aerodynamics, and he was took it, and he was implementing it as part of the safety protocol, because a lot of the men that worked from, they really needed steady emotional regulation, because they were making decisions that risk factor was very high, kind of like in the medical field. So they really needed to learn emotional state control and regulation. So he was taking the work and incorporating it into safety practices.
Awesome. So Amber, I did see that you have, I'm not too sure if it's New Zealand time, that you do have a training coming up for hypnotherapists in emotional. Can you talk about that a little bit, whether it's like a blend or what you're actually doing, how you help the community?
Yeah, so I'm teaching it coming up in July at Hypno Thoughts Live in Las Vegas, and I'm doing a 1 day, and I'm basically I'm giving out like what the system is, teaching the system of emotional intelligence, teaching emotional intelligence, and then all the skills that the people that are joining me with, how they can put them into the construct of emotional intelligence, learn emotional intelligence, and then combine emotional intelligence and hypnosis and their other skills for like a coaching, a 4 to 8 week coaching program, and how to roll that out also if they want to go into corporate or medical. And so I have a very specific um, program, protocol that I follow for that. And so that's what I'm going to be sharing. So it's pretty much plug and play.
Awesome.
And
So that's the Hypno Thoughts. How would you feel about doing one for New Zealand? Because I know that everyone here is probably going to ask me, how can I learn this stuff? Is it something that you can teach online? Have you done it before? Are you
yes,
happy
yeah,
to do that?
yeah,
Yeah.
sure can. Yeah, yeah, I would love to. I mean, it's to me, it's also in our profession, it's raising the bar of professionalism. I really believe that. I feel like we can do change quickly. And is it always in the best interest of our clients? And I feel that, really raising the bar and having a system that we follow, that we're really checking the boxes and checking the safety and the efficacy of what we're doing, and that we're doing it in a way that the client can absorb it, use it, measure it, and then kind of check in and see how they're doing is so incredibly important. So yeah, I would be thrilled to, if there's, the
Awesome,
interest
yeah.
to share. Yeah.
Okay, I'll put this video out, and then I'll get names of people, and we'll sort out a time that suits you in Maine and also in New Zealand. Because I definitely I'm keen to learn it myself as well.
Yeah. And the tools
Awesome.
are there. Like I have, within what I've developed, I have workbooks, I have manuals, I have assessments, I have surveys, I have, there's all kinds of great stuff that, if you like that kind of thing, that you can kind of assess where your client's at. And then it helps you to kind of know where to go and navigate. And again, like also, what steps I follow, and, just how that all kind of comes full circle. But there's all the tools, the support resource material as well.
That sounds really good. Is there any other questions, guys, for Amber?
Oh, it's me again.
It's good. Ariana, bring them.
Like the question.
Okay, so I was just curious to understand what your doorway was to get into the corporate space.
What, my doorway?
Yeah, what was your entry to get into
Oh.
that space?
So I had a background in corporate sales. And so I was in the kind of the medical environment, and that's when I stumbled into hypnosis. But I kind of had that foot in the door. And I also networked, and I talked a lot about my work with people in my community, and like social media. When I got into emotional intelligence, writing the book helped as well. But because I started doing corporate talks in the medical field, and then I was invited to become a coach, and I actually did just that for a couple of years, and brought in, emotional intelligence. And actually what's really interesting is it opened up the dialogue for hypnosis, and I was able to work a lot with cancer patients and oncology. And the reason that I was able to is because I got in through emotional intelligence, talked about hypnosis, and got the interest there. So there's so many people that I've been able to help that I wouldn't have been if I hadn't, approached it that way. So just talk about it, network, let people know what you do. It's a great time for this. It's needed. It's creating a lot of like understanding, and empathy is really what it's doing for self and for other people. It's beautiful work.
The other thing I was going to ask for people wanting to, because I know I know a couple of people that are going to ask, do you teach one-on-one? Like, would you take, if someone in New Zealand wanted to do what you do, would you take them on and teach them one-on-one?
Sure. Yeah.
To do what you do as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be an interesting way for people to get in and actually have one-on-one learning with you, off an expert, and model you. Sometimes it's good to model someone. So that's another option as well. Awesome. So any other questions? Ariana, any other questions? I love people that ask questions. There was one in the chat. I'm just going to have a really quick look.
I've got a question, but my voice is going, so that's why I've not been on. So I've got
Okay.
laryngitis.
Do you want to write the question, Marie, or do you want to telepathically send it to me? No, I'm kidding.
I'm going to have a go. So I'm a physio working the District Health Board. I love what you're saying, Amber. I think there's a lot of issues in teams for sure.
Yeah.
I'm really super keen on working with children, and I do mindfulness. So I would really like to know how I could incorporate that, because that's accepted. That seems to be super accepted. Yeah. I really like that pause, breathe, smile that they do in the schools. And I'm really super keen to build on that.
That's enough. I'm going to get this sorted, Marie. I'll talk to Amber when we get off the call, and I'll get what would it need to be, Amber? A day, 2 days? How do you work out training?
I would say could work it out. Depending on people's schedules, we could do a really long day, or we could break it up into 2 days.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
And of course,
yeah.
support it. But the thing with the schools and teaching the mindfulness, the emotional intelligence again is so great because, you know, within that you can do things like, you know, all kinds of stuff with play and imagination. You can incorporate EFT in it, which is amazing. When I work with little kids, I teach that a lot to, you know, manage their emotions, and, you know, and that works beautifully with younger kids. I actually think I have a PowerPoint somewhere that I made for a school. I'll look for it if you're interested. I believe I have one. Yeah, that, and you could just make it your own. But yeah, so you have the language, and whether you're doing guided imagery, whatever, you know, you don't have to call it hypnosis. It's not. You're doing different techniques and how to manage their emotions and take care of their emotions, become aware of their emotions. Yeah, it's really so nice because of how many people that you can help by just changing and incorporating different language as to what you're offering.
Awesome.
Sorry,
Right,
Amber, is
yeah.
the approach to is the approach different to delivering it to a corporation to children? And
Mm. Yeah, when I doing with a corporate, it's a lot. Like I really dive into, I go into like um, a lot of like values, significant needs, personality drivers. Like I have all of like these materials, these like self-reflected, um, guided, that I have people fill out. I do some team building. Um, I do this thing called personality profile matrix, which is super cool and it's fun, you know, with teams. So I incorporate, you know, lots of like self-discovery. So they're kind of observing, they're their own curious scientists, kind of like observing themselves and discovering like where their strengths are, and also where their opportunities are for growth. So I find it like strength finding. There's no judgment, there's no weakness, it's just opportunity for growth. So I have a lot of tools and resources that I guide them through that are interactive and fun, you know, that, and just like create a ton of like awareness, like, oh, you know, aha moments and things like that. And also compassion for the people that they work with. So they see them in a different way, through a different lens, you know, so.
Awesome. Well, guys. Well, there was one question just about the 4 quadrants. I think it was answered, but what are those?
What are the 4 quadrants? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So the first one is with the self. So it's self-awareness, because you have to be self-aware to change anything. The second one is self-regulation. The third one is social awareness. And the fourth one is relationship management.
Awesome. I can see how you can take those 4 things and even in your marketing, like going to a corporation or even working with teams and schools and saying these are the 4 things that we work on. That's pretty tidy.
Yes.
A
Yeah.
solid, like you said, a system of us and how we work.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I found like over the years, because you know I've been collecting and kind of evolving my materials. You know what has worked really well depending on my audience. Like, you know, what would I introduce in under the self-awareness? What would be important for this group? You know, and you know the approach could be different between corporate or medical, and of course to kids would be very different. What the things that I would choose, but all materials. I have one booklet that is specific for corporate and medical, and there's also a guide on how to coach it, you know, as well, not just the kind of playbook, but how you would go about coaching it, approaching it as a coach, and how you could assess what they need, so you could have an upfront conversation and ask really pointed intentional questions, so you could really suss out like what their needs are, where their hot spots are, where their challenges are, and how you can be in service to them.
Geez, I could see it. Anyone working with couples.
Yes.
Oh God, bringing a couple in, doing
Yeah.
hypnosis as well to help shift whatever's going on in the background, but then
Yeah.
bringing that quadrant in to a couple together and teaching them how each other works. I mean, that's powerful for anyone that wants to like niche into relationships. I can see how even that would be a pretty powerful offering for, you know, for couples that are wanting to make it work, you know, especially especially professional couples.
Yeah, very powerful. There's so like within that, because understanding, you know, why you do the things you do, and if someone's triggering you, why is that? And you know, and it doesn't mean that you like what somebody's doing, but it's all in the power of how you communicate it and control your state. The other thing that's really interesting is I mentioned personality profile matrix. And I do this thing where, you know, it's about dominant like personalities, and it doesn't mean we don't have other types of personality, but like, so a quick example would be, say you have two people in a relationship. One person likes to go through life and they don't like structure. They like a lot of freedom. They get really grabbed if someone tries to, they entrepreneurs. It's like they like a lot of wiggle room. Don't tell me, I'll figure it out. And if someone tries to pin them down too much, they feel like uncomfortable. And so say you have that person in a relationship, in a close relationship with a person that's like security. I want to know what's going to happen. I want the next step. I like to go with this. I don't, they will hate, they will like want to kill each other if they don't understand.
My life story.
It's almost hardwired. And when they understand this, then they can compensate, but they can also compensate for the other person and say, okay, I know that this is what this person needs. And if it doesn't go this way, this is what's going to happen. And also the person that knows that about themselves can say, okay, I can be more flexible. I can compensate. And because a person's very security based and safety, well, that's a problem because life doesn't always go as planned, right? So if they can't have flexibility, and a person that doesn't have enough structure, if they don't have enough structure, they're all over the place. That's me. I'm like, that's why I'm all about systems, because I am very, much that freedom person. It's like, if I have a friend call me, a girlfriend call me and she'll say, hey, you know, you want to like, how about like Saturday, let's go to a movie. And I'll be like, I don't know. I'm not sure about, you know, like, it's not that I don't want to, but it's like, well, I don't know. Can we talk about it in a couple days? You know, it's like, I don't want to really commit. You know, it's not that I don't want to be with them, but it's just that I like my freedom. I like my, you know, my flow. But I've understand how that can be frustrating. And I also understand that for me, in order to be more successful, I need some structure. I need some systems in place. But for two people in a relationship, if they don't understand that about each other, it can create a lot of problems, like a lot, you know, when it doesn't have to.
Yeah. Awesome. That's I think both of us are freedom and not much structure, Amber. So we did kind of talk about doing a Zoom for quite a few years.
Yeah.
and then the other day I said, let's Zoom, and you said, do it. But you said, could I have the time now? Because like if we didn't organize it, like then we would be chatting about it. So having the systems in place to go, let's do this, but let's put it in our diary now. Yeah. So awesome. All right, guys, any other questions?
I think there was just one. Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
No,
What's the name of your book, please?
It's called, I'll get you here.
I'm going to see if she also TikToks, because I'd love to follow Amber on TikTok.
Can you see it's called Behave Yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah, the hard case for soft skills.
I will put a link in when I put it onto YouTube, this recording, I'll put links. The other thing, Amber, are you TikToking? Are you TikToking little snippets of information every day for us to listen to? Because I would love to listen to you every day.
Yeah, not as much as I could be TikToking. I'm like on and off the TikTok, and I'm on and off the TikTok. I like TikTok though. I
was just thinking it would be neat, because you know how sometimes we go on TikTok and hear little snippets of experts talking about little things. Yeah. Like, it'd be nice to listen to you just like one time talking a little bit on relationships and then something else, and feeding our souls with emotional intelligence.
Yeah, really I'll take that as encouragement, because I do a lot on I run some Facebook groups, and I do a lot of that in short reels, and then I'll funnel over to Insta and TikTok. I haven't been as consistent, but it's
funnel it over, because I think huge. I was listening to a guy last night on something, and I really enjoy having the little snippets to listen to. So awesome. Well, thank you so much, Amber, for jumping on. What I will
Thank
do
you so
is if you stay on the Zoom, I'll organize have a chat about running a New Zealand time training. I'll just stop the recording now. Thanks everybody
Thank
for
you,
jumping on
everybody.
today.
Thank you so much for
yeah, it was a
taking
cool
your time with me.
cool
Thank
chat.
you.